This is going to be part 7 of our FZR restoration. Now, the next couple of days or so, we're going to be using some epoxy resin. This is a resin that's, it's called Pro Set. It's something you would probably not buy if you were not doing things professionally. And it comes in 2 parts, the resin and the hardener. We were using this in modeling applications, and it's a relatively high-tech thing as opposed to the stuff you buy in Lowe's. But I want to show a really good trick, and it applies to most, if not all, epoxies. Now, when I say most, if not all, epoxies, not the hardener now, the resin itself, usually at some point in time, this is probably about 25, maybe 30 years old. I was using this when I was molding up some airplane parts. But you can see what's happened. It's crystallized. It's become like a solid. Now, everybody that years ago when we used to, we were just experimenting with this stuff, I had called a tech company, and the guy that was walking me through some of these epoxy projects, he said, oh, just take the resin and put it in some warm water and it'll go right back to being a liquid. Well, I've done that many times. I just wanted to show this. This is a good trick you can use. Pretty much any epoxy that you've had on a shelf for years and years and years, the epoxy never goes bad. And in this case, this is a pretty expensive thing to throw away. So, and we're going to use this very soon on the FZR project. What we're going to use this for is to attach pieces of fairing together. This is a super high strength epoxy. Now all I'm doing here is just boiling up some water. It'll go back to being a liquid before it even boils up. Now you can see, and I hope this is a tip people, you just share with other people that do this kind of stuff, because this epoxy is very expensive, and if you're throwing stuff away, I don't like throwing stuff away I can still use, but this is a Thixotropic epoxy, and we're going to need this to do this fairing modification that I'm going to make probably within a week. And so I'm willing, I'm probably salvaging a $100 can of glue here, I'm not sure, and with modern pricing maybe it's $200, I don't even know. But again, you can salvage it, and it's only the resin that goes back, wants to go back to being a crystal. We'll let that sit in boiling water for 5 or 10 minutes. It'll be good to go. So we're back to just as if we had just gone out and bought a new can of epoxy. And I just realized it's over 20 years. This has been in the shop way more than 20 years. So this stuff might be, who the hell knows with the pricing now. But anyway, I thought that's a good technical tip to share with my friends before we get into the day's shop work. So what I did today, I'm trying to, I hope you use those epoxy, that information on the epoxy. That's good information. Usually most people, that's the kind of thing most people that would not really know that. But anyway, save yourself some time and money. Where the bodywork is, I have some 600 Rhino wet paper, and I'm just dusting it. And what I'm going to do is just put a dusting of primer on top of that. The reason I want to do this, I want to make sure I can close my eyes and I do not feel that at all. That was one area I was not happy with. There was an area down here I worked on. Again, I'm being really fussy because this project is, well, we have a long winter ahead of us, and I want to have this as nice as possible come springtime, or come, who knows when we'll be done. This one was needing a little bit of work. The thing I don't want to do is go and paint this without having that little bit of primer on there. Just the dusting. Now again, with the rubber glove does not lie, and even after all this, there's spots I know I can make a little better. Around the edges, nice and radius, no sharp edges. Because the way we laid out this paint job, and this is a critical thing, a critical thing when you lay out your paint job, and I've already done that like a chip foose drawing. One of the things you can paint yourself into a corner is if you don't lay out the colors right. For instance, if you painted this, one of the major colors is going to be yellow, Yamaha yellow. I paint this yellow. Now when I paint the white stripe, oh my God, it's going to take forever. There's going to be 10 rolls of tinfoil backmasking. I'm laying this out so I minimize the backmasking, and always that the white is the first color that goes on, so you're not going, oh, especially over red or yellow, where it can tend to bleed through. Now I noticed, and I was real happy about it, the joint on this is almost that you can't see it. If you didn't know there's a joint there, you might not know. You know, you might get away with it, but anyway. Just a light dusting now of primer on the whole part. I'll let that dry half an hour or so. And by then, hopefully it will have warmed up enough out there. Now, another trick, and it's you know, this is the kind of stuff you learn from when you paint for 50 plus years. When I put the white over this, I'm going to mix a small batch with high penetrating thinner. So it'll take a long time to dry. It's going to dry overnight. It'll dry for a while, because then we're done with this part. We'll work on other parts. But what's going to happen, that first coat of high penetrating thinner will get a good bite into the primer. The primer acts as glue to the gel coat. Otherwise, and I'm sure everybody that's gone to various looking at bikes, meetups and stuff, when you see paint peeling off gel coat, it's usually because the steps from the last couple of days have not been adhered to. That's almost always the problem, is you skip building a good foundation for the house. Something we're trying not to do. So it looks like we have a day we'll be able to paint. There's no prediction of rain. And if I get this part in white by the end of the day, they'll be just one step ahead. I have the handle. I'm going to try to set this up on that tripod somehow. Now, the little touch-up that we're going to do, of course, is with the primer sealer. Sealer is the big word here. No matter what brand you use, it should be sealer. Now, keep in mind, this is just a light dusting coat, a very light coat to touch up the areas where I sanded through around the bodywork. So the objective, of course, is that we have no raw gel coat showing, where there would not be a barrier coat of primer. I'll call it a glue coat for lack of a better word, because the primer here is only acting as glue. Now, I'll give that a half hour or so to dry. We're coming up on 40 degrees here. It's getting cold, so cold is in our favor now, because what's going to happen, the slow penetrating thinner in the white paint, the high penetrating, slow drying paint, that's going to should get a really good bond. We'll let this dry for half an hour, have some coffee, and come back out here ready to go. Now, this first coat of white has to go on wet, relatively wet, because I want good penetration. You notice the wind is blowing like crazy here. The wind, it's uncanny. The wind doesn't blow until you put paint in the paint gun. Unbelievable. The second coat, just an average coat. I want to start filling in all the gray spots. I don't want anything not to be white. I'll explain why in the shop.
Now, by the end of the third coat, everything is looking white, white, white. And it's so important because the white striping, if there are gray spots, it spoils the whole effect of what I have in mind for this paint job. That whole part needs to be white, white to start the job. Now these coats actually went on pretty good, considering the weather, considering the wind was blowing and it's a cold, cloudy day. I'm amazed we got this done today. I feel like we really got something accomplished. So that's a total of 3 coats of white. Now the reason I put so much white on, I really probably only needed 2 coats, because the way this works out, when I designed this paint job up, actually I designed this one too, the white that separates the black from the yellow is a critical part, and if it's gray and not white, you lose a lot of what my vision for the paint job was. And you may think, well, that white stripe between the colors isn't really that important, and well, whatever. But you know what? The reality is, there's a reality to all this. To me, it really is. And when I laid this out in my mind, I had a vision in my mind, and when I laid it out with tape, and I looked at doing how many hours of work go into these restorations, I didn't want to have a gray stripe, I wanted to have a white stripe. Now see, just as an example, within the next couple days we're going to be pulling this all apart, I think, the way the weather's gone south. This never lined up well, no matter how many brackets I made, and so what I'm going to do is permanently attach this piece to the front piece. And that glue that I showed in the beginning of the job, I'm going to make an aluminum bracket so that I do not see this seam. And no matter every FZR I've ever seen, this seam is terrible. So we're going to eliminate that seam. Now, I may have to make some other bracketing to hold the fairing. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But we have that Fixotropic glue, and we'll find something to use it for, believe me. That is some good quality glue. But just keep in mind, I have this paint job all laid out in my mind, and that white stripe in between is going to be a critical part of it. So I really feel like this worked out just perfectly. I always like to, before I end a session, look around the garage if there's any other little things. Now in this case, we're at the part of the year. I have my multiple battery chargers on charge, just in case we get some riding days. Well, we don't know if we will. And you never know, the bikes are all ready to go. They're all charged up. But actually we're coming up on a part of the year where we're going to be looking forward to doing this restoration more than anything else. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and of course, thanks for watching.